Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Amit. Palantir and Kinder Morgan have just signed a multi-year agreement to strengthen pipeline operations. This was news that came out about 3 days ago, but it came out, or December 2nd, came out on the same day that the news came out that Palantir also got a $43 million extension of a contract from the Space Systems Command. I made a video about that. I missed this news. I honestly didn't even see of it until like a day ago. I was like, oh wait, there were two press releases that happened. Like they put out two pieces of news, and the stock is tanking very heavily right now in December of 2021. I feel like there was a little bit of an impetus to be like, let's put out two things. Maybe that'll stop the bleeding. And it's like, no, that's not stopping the bleeding. But regardless of it stopping the bleeding or not, the fundamentals of this news are really important. I'm going to do a couple things in this video. Number one, I'm going to be talking about who Kinder Morgan is. By the way, they're a company that makes $11.7 billion in revenue. They have 11,000 employees worldwide, and they are choosing Palantir software to optimize their business. So regardless of what this does for the stock price, it's irrelevant. It's important to understand why this is happening, what this means for the commercial trajectory of Palantir's market opportunity here, and ultimately what this means for the next decade along in terms of energy. And we're going to talk a little bit about energy production. I'm releasing another video, or I probably have already released this, about the renewable energy market opportunity Palantir has, but this company doesn't really work in the renewable space, so we're going to talk about what that means for energy long-term with Palantir. Now, first, let's read from the press release a little bit and talk a little bit about what this means. Palantir, a leading builder of operating systems, has partnered with Kinder Morgan, one of the largest energy infrastructures in North America today, December 2nd, 2021. They announced a multi-year partnership. There's not a numerical estimate on what this deal is worth, but their average contract is worth about $8.1 million. So we're assuming it's there or over that price in terms of the multi-year horizon that exists to deploy Palantir's data integration software platform, Foundry, flagship software, in Kinder Morgan's storage operations to drive efficiency and safety. What that means is storage operations is how they store oil, natural gas, all the stuff that they ultimately go out into the world and get, and also the thousands of different variables that are integrated in order to make that process more effective when it comes to actually extracting it from the earth, storing it, and then exporting it to all the different companies that buy from them. Driving efficiency and safety means making sure the oil doesn't get spilled. Shout out to BP. I remember when that happened back in 2008, and I just saw a picture of a duck that was covered in oil on Good Morning America. And I remember going to school, and I was so sad. I was like, oh my God, why did this company do this? Like that stuff happens, and that's rough. So you need safety, and then you need efficiency to make sure the supply and demand economics of oil doesn't go to the point where we're paying $17,000 a gallon like it feels right now. So I think this is important so that I could save a little bit at the pump, because you need efficiency and safety when it comes to oil energy mining companies. Now, Kinder Morgan will deploy Foundry to optimize its U.S.-based gas storage operations. So really it's using Foundry first in the U.S., and if this works, I'm assuming very, very, very likely, there's a big likelihood it'll likely expand to other places where they extract gas in terms of using Foundry. Operators and decision makers will be provided with a common operating picture of the company's infrastructure, connecting transactional systems of data streams, analysis, and operations over supply grid integrity, customers, and pricing. With real-time access to this information, Foundry will enable Kinder Morgan to make data-driven decisions on gas storage optimization and maintenance scheduling. So pretty much everything I just said a minute before I read that quote is exactly what the integration of Palantir's Foundry software is going to be when it comes to working with Kinder Morgan. Now, a quote from our boy, Shyam Sankar, future CEO of Palantir, maybe did a video on that. You can check that out. Palantir's current COO, which for those who don't know is Chief Operating Officer. Safety, reliability, and affordability are critical to the nation's energy infrastructure. Makes sense. Utilizing Foundry will strengthen Kinder Morgan's ability to maintain its lead in those fields. And that's a very basic quote. I feel like sometimes when they do these press releases, they give like the basic quotes, and I'm like, that's cool, but give us something, give us like a real good quote, which is the next sentence. So then he followed up with a real good quote. Energy companies like Kinder Morgan have vast amounts of data from disparate sources that rarely interact, and we believe Foundry is the best tool in the market to solve this complex problem. Now, the reason this is the good quote is because when he says they have vast amounts of data from disparate sources, these are sources that are not in the same place, that rarely interact. Those three things are what you have to combine. They've got a lot of data. They're in dispersed places, right? They're in places that are not integrating with each other, and they're not interacting. So if you've got data of how much oil is coming from this oil rig and data from how much oil is already given in this oil rig, thousands times at scale, and they're not interacting with each other, if they all start to interact with each other, and you can start to use AI and ML to point patterns within how that data is actually coming together, then you're able to visualize and understand better simulations of data for how the company ultimately reacts and for how to better extract energy, which is sort of the thesis of Palantir Foundry. Now, last quote we're going to read from Mark Hughes, Kinder Morgan CIO. Palantir's Foundry was particularly useful at delivering us results on critical and complex challenges quickly. In our business, we put a premium on doing things safely. To be able to also move at such speed is extremely valuable. So that's the relationship and the nature of what is going on here. Now, Kinder Morgan, on their website, if you go there, you'll see that they are a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, $11.7 billion in revenue. And Kinder Morgan is one of the largest energy infrastructure companies in North America. They own an interest in or operate approximately 83,000 miles of pipelines and 144 terminals. That's a lot of gas. They must have ate beans. Our pipelines transport natural gas, gasoline, crude oil, carbon dioxide, and more. Our terminals store and handle renewable fuels, petroleum products, chemicals, vegetable oils, and other products. So this is a company that's doing the dirty work. As much as we all hate gas and oil and like we want to be renewable, all that stuff, which I agree is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. I think it's better for the environment. I think it's going to help people. I think we have a ethical obligation to try to help the environment and leave it better than where we left it at. It is also very important to recognize that we also need energy, right? And this is the nature of the energy debate that is very complicated. And you have to kind of walk a fine line. We need energy. I need to power this camera. I need this light in the background. I need to go drive to Walgreens in a little bit. And I need gas to be able to do that because there's not electric cars that cost the same amount as a gas car costs, which means that I don't have the money to get a car if I don't have gas to a combustion engine to be able to buy, right? Like these are the integrations of where, as much as we want to get to renewable energy and like energy that's good, we also have to recognize that there's got to be companies like Kinder Morgan doing the work that they're doing, or else we don't have energy. And I'm you know, I'm very like I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who argue the other way, because if you believe that, then you should stop using energy. And when you stop using energy, you realize that life sucks. So you got to use energy, right? Well, where's the energy going to come from? It's going to come from a company that's doing the dirty work to actually get that energy. Palantir has integrated with that company in order to make their operations more efficient. And this is what is important to analyze here. Palantir cannot be the company that says we're only going to focus on renewable energy. Why? Because there is a market opportunity that is then left underserved for data analysis and decision making for the companies that are doing the quote unquote dirty stuff. Now, the irony here is if the integration of Palantir's Foundry software can be better allocated within the resources that Kinder Morgan has, and companies like Kinder Morgan, right? They're not the only company that does some of this dirty stuff. Then you actually get less dirty stuff. So I mentioned the BP oil spill, right? The BP oil spill was bad. And if there was something like a Palantir Foundry that existed, and it was able to give people a better understanding of the supply chains, better understanding of how much oil they have, better understandings of where to mine, all these, like, there's so many different variables, right, that you could talk about of how to actually do the thing that BP is doing, which is drilling oil and then exporting it. Maybe there wouldn't have been an oil spill, right? And there's been a lot of oil spills outside of BP. There's been a lot of oil and gas companies that end up making a mistake, because at the end of the day, we're humans. We make mistakes, right? Everyone's like, these companies are so horrible. It's like these companies make mistakes. Companies are not entities outside of the fact that they're people that comprise those entities. And guess what? People are imperfect. People make mistakes. Now, they're very costly mistakes, and they hurt the environment, and they hurt a lot of things. But a lot of the times, the price of getting things to the world is making some mistakes along the way. You want to reduce the level of mistakes that happen. And the nature of Palantir's Foundry software, the way I'm understanding it, and I'm trying to be as objective as possible, right? Trying to understand it at the intersection of a company like Kinder Morgan and analyzing what does this press release, what does this multi-year partnership really mean, is if they can operationalize and make efficient the process by which a company like Kinder Morgan mines coal or gets oil or whatever they do to the environment in order to get the energy that we as consumers ultimately use, there will be less waste. There will be better storage, which ultimately leads to better prices, which is good for the macro level economy. And there will be less accidents, which is the whole idea about safety that was mentioned a couple times in this press release, because there's a lot of accidents and a lot of hard things that are associated with trying to get oil out of the ground. Now, the final thing I want to say on this is that eventually we're going to transition to renewable energy. And the beautiful thing about Palantir is like Kinder Morgan's going to be screwed if we translate to renewable energy, because like if they're not working in renewables, and it doesn't seem like their business, no matter how much they mention renewables on the website, like it seems kind of sus. Like most of their business is oil and gas. Unless they switch to renewables, they're not going to have a business anymore. Obviously, we're not going to switch to renewables overnight, right? This is a 30 to 50 year process for us to fully transition to renewable energy. So they're going to be in business for a while. But the beautiful thing about Palantir is that they're going to be able to work with the renewable energy sector. They're going to be able to work with the oil and gas sector, because at the end of the day, they have software and technology. You're investing in a technology company that can integrate with everyone to make the operations more efficient. It is very important, particularly in the United States, for the United States to be able to become energy independent. And this is not getting political. This is rather trying to make an argument that The United States needs to become energy independent and have technology companies within the United States working with oil and gas companies in the United States as we wait for the transition to renewable energy to happen. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. The question becomes, how fast can it happen? How many startups can fail and succeed? Because you need a lot of them to fail and succeed to become the next Exxon Mobils of the world, right? We need the renewable Exxon Mobil. That doesn't exist yet. It does not exist. If you got it, tell me what it is, and tell me if it's as big as Exxon Mobil. And that means that we need to get a lot more of those companies at scale. We need a Shell Gas. We need a BP. We need an Exxon. We need all the major oil and gas companies that exist today. They need to be the renewable energy companies that we need, not only for the market to fundamentally shift, but obviously in order to save the planet. However, you cannot do that willy-nilly overnight, and you definitely should not do that at the expense of one country becoming dominant and independent in and of itself, right? And this gets into this sort of macro sociological argument that I'm trying to make. And the reason I'm making this is because Palantir is very focused on protecting American interests. That's the nature of this company. They want to protect the Western Hemisphere because they believe America has some of the best values in the world. If America can become energy independent and not have to rely on oil and gas companies from Saudi Arabia and all these other places where the values don't even align, and it's a weird compromise because you're taking gas from people and you're buying gas from people that you kind of have to rely on because you're not making enough gas because you're not doing enough mining, and because now they're not a democracy, but you like them because you get gas. It's a really it's a messy situation, and if America was just able to produce it ourselves and not have to rely on those people, that would give us the time and the capital to eventually be able to allocate to get to the renewable energy market long term. The renewable energy market is going to happen, but it is very important to not give up your independence in the meantime, especially if it's going to take a long time. Like if it's going to take the next 20, 30 years to really get to that fully functional renewable economy to the point where ExxonMobil doesn't exist, but the renewable mobile company exists, you want to probably not rely on all these companies countries that are unstable and that don't have the same philosophical values as you for the one thing that everyone needs, which is energy, over the next 2 decades. You would rather want to become independent. And the reason I'm saying this again is because Palantir is one of those companies that wants America to be independent and not have to rely on other countries and like hindering to those countries just for something like gas. So if there are energy companies in the United States that are allowed from a regulatory perspective to be able to work in the United States and actually get the stuff that we need to get the energy we need to be independent, and Palantir is able to integrate with them while we eventually transition to renewable energy, then I think that's a very big market opportunity. I think a lot of different companies would be able to use Palantir, and I ultimately think a lot of safety protocols would be better so that we don't have the waste that we have in this industry because there's a lot of waste, and we don't have the accidents that we have in this industry because there's a lot of accidents. What's the best way to solve waste and accidents? Data. And ultimately, that's why I think that this is a pretty important partnership. Now, Wall Street didn't care about this. The stock kept tanking even when this news came out. I think they released the $43 million contract. Then they released this news like 10 minutes later. It was just funny because Wall Street was like, okay, cool, $43 million. That's cute. Oh, cool. You're working with a company that makes $12 billion in revenue. That's also really cute. Down 20%, right? They did not care at all. But if you're invested in the fundamentals of this company and you're trying to really analyze how the company is building itself from a macro perspective, then I think deals like this are obviously very important to analyze. Deals like this are important to sort of understand. And deals like this are important to recognize that there is long-term growth trajectory in the commercial markets, not just the governmental markets, for Palantir to help companies like this with their data. So those are my thoughts on this partnership. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this partnership. And also let me know your guys' thoughts about energy and renewable energy and American independence. I'm curious about this stuff. It doesn't have to be political, but rather we can be logical about how does this operate? Why is this important? And ultimately, what is Palantir's role in the long term in helping the energy markets? So thank you guys for watching. My name is Amit. This is the Daily Business Show. I look forward to reading your comments as usual, and I'll see you in the next one.